the value creation opportunity from renewables in this region is in the neighborhood of $2 trillion US. Sustainability is actually an opportunity to boost economic growth and create more jobs in the region. The IPO of Aqua Power, which is a Saudi developer of renewable energy projects. So the company is valued at $11 billion US, and the IPO drew in around $1.2 billion US. So it's huge.
And welcome to a brand new third season of the Change Officer podcast. We are kicking off this new chapter in 2022 with a salient topic and a very special guest. The world is at a pivotal moment to act on environmental sustainability. How can countries in the Middle East take the lead on sustainability? Is it possible to build an environmentally sustainable business model without sacrificing growth and profit? My guest gave great answers to these questions, which is why I'm super excited to share this conversation with Dr. Shihab Elborai, partner with Strategy and a leading international management consulting firm that delivers end-to-end strategic sustainable solutions to clients in the energy sector. Stay with us in the next 40 minutes as we uncover the green future of the MENA region. I am Vuk, and you are watching the Change Officer podcast. Welcome to Change Officer, Shihab.
Thank you, Vuk.
Thank you for taking the time. I was really looking forward to the conversation, especially because of the topic that we're going to cover today. And so far, I haven't met a better person to talk to than you. So I have a set of questions, and I'm going to be very curious today. And you can try to give me and my audience an insight and kind of a forecast of what we can expect in this very interesting space.
Yeah, I mean, thank you again. And your audience, I think I have a very simple message that I hope at the end of our chat I can get across, which is really about the future of this region. And the message is simply that the sustainability and the transition to a greener, cleaner global energy system is not necessarily bad news or a penalty for the region. It is, in fact, an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for innovation, for business. And we've looked at it and sized it, and we've identified that the value creation opportunity from renewables in this region is in the neighborhood of $2 trillion US, in the next 10 years.
Wow.
So it's there, and it's real, and it is across the, all the domains of energy, transportation, waste management, every facet of economic life in the region. Can be transformed, and with the proper regulatory framework, with the proper engagement of innovation and business, it is a huge opportunity and not a penalty.
And I think this was a great promise on what we're going to deliver by the end of the show.
Sure.
Now I'm going to take you a couple of steps back and to set up the stage of the conversation and introduce one more time our audience about the problem that needs to be solved, and what will happen if we stay in the state where we are now, both regionally and globally, and we don't challenge the status quo and don't work on a green tomorrow.
Well, that's I think a hypothetical. I think as if you take the big picture of human history, it's one of progress, and it is progress from medieval times through the Industrial Revolution, using coal, through using oil and gas, and now the next stage, which is using renewables and harnessing really all the clean sources of energy that we have in the planet, whether they're solar, wind, geothermal, to create an era of energy abundance. And I'm optimistic that we will innovate and get through what needs to be done. And every step on this timeline of progress was necessary and had a role to play. Mm-hmm. We would not get to the next step had we not been through the one before it. It's hard to imagine a medieval society building a giant wind turbine or a solar farm. So we are headed there. It is a global requirement, and I would say it is really the question of sustainability right now is the question where most people around the world agree upon. And this level of agreement and alignment is actually increasing every day. So the science is there. Everybody realizes the need to have a transformation in the energy system. Political actors are taking time to reach out the right conclusions with all these agreements and treaties and so on. But I'm not really counting on that. I'm counting more on consumer sentiment, right? Where awareness is increasing and people are demanding greener products. And I'm counting also on investors who are following the consumers. And what we're seeing right now is that whether it is in terms of investments, so equity investors, or loans, financing, sustainability, and really minimizing the impact on the planet is taking an increasingly large part in determining where capital flows.
Sure. And I think you're right. There is a kind of a natural progression, from era to era and over the previous couple of centuries, what we've been going through and different revolutions. But the pace of change is faster than ever.
Sure.
Today, and things are happening rapidly. How urgent is the need for the change?
For this region, I think so globally change is happening, right? And we as in this region face a choice, either to kind of keep doing what we've been doing for the past 10 years, 20 years, or to change. I think the choice has already been made. We're in the middle or in the beginning, let's say, of a transition in this region, where renewables are becoming a fact and a part of the energy mix, targeted energy mix for all the large electricity systems in the region, whether it is Saudi Arabia with a target of 50% renewables, the UAE with also a target of 70% renewables. Other countries will follow. So you see Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Iraq, even with ambitious renewable energy targets. And I think this is only the beginning or a sign of change that will become more and more rapid. And there is an inflection point that is coming up at some point where we're going to see this pace pick up.
Sure.
Yeah.
For someone not coming really from the industry or not understanding the whole space, one from public would probably think of clean energy being a threat to the region, because the region has been, for the previous 10, 20, 30 years, dependent obviously on oil,
sure,
which is nothing but clean, right? So clean energy, is it a threat or the opportunity to the region?
I think it's an opportunity to the region, the transition from a world that is running on an energy system that is based on oil and gas to a world that is based on renewable energy. And the reason why I say that is that the region has both. It has the oil and gas that can be produced most easily with the least environmental harm at the least cost. Okay, and also renewable sources that are abundant and that are cheap. So at every point in the transition from today to the future, the region can produce the energy product that meets everyone's requirements in terms of cost, in terms of environmental impact. So it can take the lead actually in this transition and produce the product that meets market requirements at every point. It has the advantage if the market is conventional, so in the conventional market. It also has the advantage in the renewable or the clean market. We see costs of renewable electricity in this region reaching, the range of 1.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Just to put that into perspective, 5 years ago, when we had the first set of utility scale renewable tenders in the region, there were shockwaves going around the world where one of the bids came at 2 US cents per kilowatt hour. Most renewable energy costs at that time were around, the lowest were 4 cents per kilowatt hour, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So we are reaching, a world where electricity, clean electricity is heading towards something that is around 1 cent per kilowatt hour in this region, right? If you take the same plant and you move it somewhere else, like let's say Germany, it will cost at least twice as much, because the solar resource that they have there it operates for half the hours during a year. So you already have an advantage because of where you're at.
Sure.
Of 50%.
Okay, I understand. All right, I have a bit of advantage over some of the audience that is behind the cameras, because we had a chat before the show, and I do understand already sort of some of the concepts, but I would like to. I'm afraid that we can easily go into becoming very technical and and confuse the audience. What I would like to explain also as something that can help everyone understand the future and the opportunities, etc. When you think about companies, all of the companies around us, especially now the leading corporations, etc., everyone is talking about going clean, becoming carbon neutral, carbon negative.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who is not educated or doesn't understand the space, when someone like, I don't know, big technology company says something along the lines, we're trying to be carbon neutral, they're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you have to do with carbon? You're not trucking industry, you're not using petrol. Like, what do you mean? Can we unpack that concept of what does it mean for a company to become carbon neutral?
Okay, simple. Every human activity, right, economy-wide, if it is doing anything useful, generates CO2. You and I just sitting and having this chat in this room, right? Just by the virtue of breathing, we're producing CO2, right? The lights that we're using, the cameras, all of these things, to make them, right? Don't forget about operating them, right? To actually make them.
To build this microphone.
To build this microphone, some energy was used, and this energy was most likely, generated by burning coal or maybe not coal, or, gas, most
Sure.
likely, but maybe coal, maybe depending on where it was produced. In Germany, for example, they would have used coal, right? And that CO2, which was locked in underground in the form of coal or gas or oil for millions of years, right, was now released into the atmosphere, and so that's your carbon footprint. So any activity, where it doesn't have to be even a business, a household, right, a person has a carbon footprint, depending on what activity he does. Large corporations actually have large carbon footprints. Whether let's you used as an example Microsoft or Amazon or whatever it is, right? They have huge data servers, right, that actually use electricity to process data, right? This electricity generates a lot of heat. These data centers need to be cooled, right? Again, requires a lot of energy. They have lots of employees. These employees need to, drive around, fly around, use servers of their own, and so on. So all of this generates CO2. These companies wanting to be carbon neutral means that they are going to reduce the amount of energy that they consume, make sure that the energy that they consume, through being more efficient, make sure that the energy that they consume is sourced from renewable sources, so that no CO2 is generated in making that energy. And for the energy or for the CO2 that cannot be avoided, they will figure out a way of offsetting this CO2 generation, either through planting trees or carbon capture, or paying somebody else to reduce their CO2 consumption through green certificates and so on.
All right. Okay, that does shed light on the whole topic, and it does make sense. Having that in mind, for a region such as Middle East, where we talk about UAE in particular, every single company around the world will be, if not already, will be looking at this space.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Which makes the whole world your potential market. So having that in mind, how can we describe the opportunity now that we have in front of us here in the region that we can take the advantage of?
It's an opportunity on many levels, right? Let's talk about the widest sense, or the widest level. If we buy into the hypothesis that the world right now wants to have greener products, products that are, have a minimal carbon footprint, zero carbon, maybe even negative carbon footprint. What does that mean? Well, this product actually removed CO2 from the atmosphere to produce it, right? If there is a market for that kind of product, and people willing to pay a premium for it, or they want that and they don't want anything else, right? Well, where can you produce such a product at the lowest cost, in the most resilient and reliable way? The answer would be in this region, in countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, where you have an abundant renewable resource. You also have established financing mechanisms to build renewable power plants at scale, and located in the middle of all of these markets in Europe and in the Far East. This is the region's best way to have a competitive advantage in manufacturing. right? It's always been a challenge for the region to, if you considered commodities like steel or aluminum, how do I enter into the steel or the aluminum business or whatever other business where there are already established players that are operating at scale in China, in Europe, in other parts of the world? Well, the way you enter into those markets now is by competing, by saying, that product produced in Europe or this product produced in China has a, twice or 3 times or 4 times the carbon footprint than that my product produced here has. And guess what? My product is cheaper or, same cost. Then, that becomes a means of attracting manufacturing and investments into the region. Renewable energy, unlike oil and gas, is very hard to transport over long distances, right? So whether it is by building transmission lines or building pipelines for hydrogen or ammonia, which are produced from renewable energy, all of those are inefficient and high cost. The best way that you can use renewable energy is to use it where it's made. Right? So build the green products here, near the power plants or the green hydrogen production facilities that are needed to decarbonize these products. And instead of transporting, green electrons or green hydrogen, it's very expensive. Transport steel and aluminum and finished products, which are much, much more cheaper and easier to transport around.
Which is very smart because the ending impact is the same.
Yep.
Where you're reducing the carbon footprint.
Yep.
Instead of transporting the energy to reduce it on the site, right?
Yep.
By manufacturing steel in Germany, you would manufacture steel in UAE or Saudi or in any country in the region.
It becomes more economical to bring the transportation.
Exactly, you use the existing channels of transportation to just export the already carbon neutral or negative product out in the world.
Yep.
Which is amazing, which is putting a completely different angle of thinking for the region and what the future holds, because a very common opinion and what people are afraid most of the time, we're asking, when are we going to use all of our oil reserves,
Yeah.
And then basically meaning like when is the end of this region, which is really far from the case.
No, I don't. I don't think so, and I think it's a mindset shift that needs to happen, where we're not looking at this as a threat to the region. So forget about the global issue, right? Let's just focus on the region, right? And this is not a threat to the region. This is an opportunity for the region, because the region can be the place where you can have achieve the objectives of sustainability, leadership in sustainability, and leadership in cost together, rather than trading one off, for the other.
Which cannot be beaten.
Yeah.
If you put these two together, it becomes an ultimate solution.
And that's what I started off the conversation by saying, that what we're seeing now is a future where we have a pathway to an era of energy abundance, where we can have as much energy as we want, right? For very little cost and very little impact on the environment, right? So it changes energy. You can imagine a future where the whole notion of energy economics, of it being scarce or limited by something, becomes actually a thing of the past.
Which is amazing. So you've been around this space for a while. What's going on in this industry in the region? What's happening? What's the progress that is being made? What are the companies that are taking the lead? What are some good use cases, case studies? Can you share some insights with us?
Sure, and I think a lot of stuff is happening, and it's again on many levels. So at a, let's say, national level, right? There's not a single country in the region that has not announced a huge shift in its energy mix. As I was mentioning, Saudi Arabia wants to build tens of gigawatts of renewable energy. Same in the UAE, same in Egypt and Iraq and Oman. You have announcements of mega projects in hydrogen production in NEOM, for example, gigawatts of hydrogen production, aiming for export of green ammonia. You have exports of clean energy in the form of blue ammonia that was done by Saudi Aramco to Japan just this past year.
Wow. Was it the first export of that kind?
Yeah, first export of that kind. You have just recently the IPO of Aqua Power, which is a Saudi developer of renewable energy projects. One of actually the pioneers of in that field globally. When everybody else was disregarding renewable energies, these guys doubled down on it and started actually developing projects initially outside of Saudi Arabia, in South Africa, in Europe, in Jordan, and now with the targets in the region, in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia, they're taking such a boost. They've had their IPO just recently, and it is the second largest IPO in the region after Saudi Aramco. It is, the company is valued at $11 billion US dollars, and the IPO drew in around $1.2 billion US dollars. So it's huge.
Wow.
And there are other smaller players in the region as well that are doing very interesting things, like Yellow Door and Enerware, who are targeting commercial or sub-utility scale projects, not as large as Aqua Power, but still very, very interesting, and a lot of activity in that domain. And there are domains beyond power generation, like transportation, which you don't typically think of as energy. To my mind, companies like Swivel or Kareem are actually helping address the energy problem through better use of transportation and optimization of transportation systems. That's all part of the answer at the end.
And one wouldn't think intuitively about energy when they think about, for example, Kareem and Swivel, while energy plays actually a very big role of their value proposition as a company, right?
Absolutely. And once you mix things like this ride sharing with electrification of transportation, so electric vehicles, with these massive public transportation developments that we've seen first in Dubai and now in Riyadh, with new concepts and reimagination of what it means to live in cities, like what's happening in NEOM with the line. All of those things that are in the transportation domain actually are part of the energy and the sustainability equation, just more broadly.
Very interesting. What does it need to happen to reach the stage where there is a plenty of manufacturing in the region with green products, where every company is carbon neutral, where this became the new normal for everyone? First of all, what would you say? How far away are we from that state?
I think it's something that is happening. There are certain things that need to be put in place first. I think there is, first of all, the infrastructure that needs to be built, right? So we have big targets in renewable energy generation, but I think, there are only a few plants that have actually been built or are already in operations, right? So, but we're going to see a pipeline of gigawatt scale, renewable energy plants being built in the region. Once you have this transformation of the energy mix, and I think we're already seeing certain signs of that, and there's a lot of interest created by these record-breaking announcements of renewable energy costs. So players like some of the corporate players that we were talking about, global players in e-commerce and so on, are looking at the region and reassessing whether this region can be part of their green and decarbonization story. So we're seeing initial signs of that. I think with time this pace will accelerate, and you will hit an inflection point where things will start reinforcing each other in a positive way and increasing the pace even further. That's the infrastructure part. I think to complement the infrastructure part, there needs to be a policy part and a role for government to play. And policymakers are already taking the right steps in terms of the energy mix and targeting renewables. What is still missing is the broader picture that integrates all of this together. We were talking a little bit earlier that if you view things correctly, there is no separation between power generation and transportation and waste management and urban life, let's say, or urban design. These are all the same problem. Sure. And I think if you take this broader view of what the issue is, you start coming up with the right policy ideas and proposals to unlock the value that's there. Let's take something that we were discussing a little bit earlier. Take something like waste management. Right? Waste management is a notoriously hard problem to crack. Everybody has been trying to figure out how do we control this exponential growth in waste that people generate as the number of people living on this planet increases, and they become all more affluent and with more access to single-use products and so on. Well, the way to really tackle the waste management system appropriately is by putting in place the right policies that unlock the value in this waste. So waste should not be an issue, and what do we do with it? How do we get rid of it in as a penalty or a cost or a chore? It is actually a huge value stream, whether it is as a source of metals and materials that have already been processed and brought to a state of refinement and readiness that is much better than producing the product from raw materials. This is raw material that has already been processed. It's just a matter of creating the incentives and the economic incentives for maintaining these waste streams separated and using them. So it's just, how can we create room for people and businesses to benefit from something that is a resource rather than a chore or a burden?
To that point, so talking to all of the, as everyone is now already familiar with, the whole promise of the change officer is trying to answer that question, what the future holds and what are the opportunities that we should be looking at the future, by talking to the change makers themselves. So if you were to talk to all of the potential future change makers that are listening to the show, that are looking into new ventures, new ideas, new opportunities, and how they could make a difference and come up with the next breakthrough or focus on a certain part of the industry where they can create some big value.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you put your bet on? Is there any specific part of the industry or specific problem that is still requires solution that you should point all of them to look at and try to find a solution?
I think that there's a huge space for innovation in this question, and it is broad, as I was saying. It spans, look at electricity generation, transmission to consumption at home, and there's a lot that can be done in that domain, and a lot of actors already playing there. Transportation. Whether it is in rolling out public transportation infrastructure, ride sharing, electrification of transportation, personal transportation or soft transportation modes, that's another domain. If you look at waste management, right, whether it is through creating solutions that help separate waste streams, manage them properly, recycle, reuse, reduce the amount that you have to, finally either incinerate or bury. All of these domains and more, I think, are creating a space. And I think that what is required is a mindset shift, where we try to think of the, rather than it being a question of, sustainability versus economic growth and job creation, combining the both, saying that sustainability is actually an opportunity to boost economic growth and create more jobs in the region, and this is really what is required, and this is where the innovation is required. It's not an innovation in a particular topic or subject, or it's huge. The domain is large. It's by looking at each one of these different pieces and saying, how do I change the sustainability requirement as something that dampens economic activity or reduces economic activity, reduces growth, jobs, to something that actually, does the opposite of that?
Which I think it's a great question for one to ask him or herself when they're starting to think about the space.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, a signature question for the Change Officer show is, if you were to be given a hat of the Chief Change Officer of the region, having in mind the whole conversation that we had, what would be on the top of your agenda to start changing?
It's we come back to the same thing, which is a change of mindset. So I want, I don't want this fork where you have to make a trade-off, where you choose on either take one path and have economic growth and job creation, but ignore sustainability or treat sustainability as a side thing, an add-on, right? Or another path where you're promoting sustainability but at the expense of economic growth and job creation. No, that's not the game that we need to play. We need to play a game where they're both together and part of the same thing.
Amazing. All right, so as a part of this whole new season of the Change Officer, we have this traditional thing that we're going to include in every show, which is that I would ask you to kindly suggest the next Change Officer to be on the show. So if you have anyone in mind that you would like to recommend that you believe is spearheading a change in a certain industry with the work that they're doing, you have your now time to nominate them.
I nominate Daniel Zivitz. He's the CEO and founder of Enerware and a pioneer in that field. He was an alum, actually, of our company of Strategy and he left a while back to start his startup. So he should have an interesting perspective on some of the things we discussed.
All right. So Daniel, this is a public invitation for you to join us in the Change Officer and to continue this great conversation that we had today. And I really hope that we're going to see you in the studio soon. Shihab, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
It was another great learning experience for me. I hope that you guys all picked up something inspirational for you and that you learned more about this space. Personally, my biggest takeaway from meeting you and having a conversation with you is that I have a completely different picture about the potential of this region than before I had a chat with you.
Great.
Which is
Mission
amazing.
Accomplished.
Mission accomplished. At least with one, and I hope with many more behind the cameras. So I hope we're going to stay in touch. We're going to have another session, couple of months or years down the road to reflect on what we discussed today. And let's see.
My pleasure.
Thank you again for taking the time, and everyone stay tuned. There is another great episode coming out next Monday. If you like what we're doing here with the Change Officer podcast, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you for staying until the end, and take care.